The Galactic Dominion had ruled the galaxy with an iron fist for millennia. A sprawling empire of unparalleled might, it had crushed every civilization that dared to stand in its way. The Dominion's rise to power was marked by a relentless campaign of conquest, fueled by an insatiable hunger for control. Each new world that fell to their forces was another jewel in the crown of the empire, and each victory solidified their reputation as the undisputed masters of the galaxy. Their fleets, massive and terrifying, were the embodiment of this power, a symbol of the Dominion's ability to annihilate any who opposed them. The Dominion's history was one of calculated brutality. They did not simply defeat their enemies. They obliterated them, leaving no trace of their existence. Planets were razed, populations decimated, and cultures erased from memory. It was this ruthless efficiency that made them feared across the stars. The mere mention of the Dominion's approach was enough to send entire civilizations into panic. Resistance was futile, as those who dared to fight back were swiftly and mercilessly destroyed. In the face of such overwhelming force, surrender was often the only option, and even then, it offered little more than a prolonged death sentence. Over time, this unchallenged dominance bred arrogance. The leaders of the Dominion, secure in their power, began to view themselves as invincible. They saw the galaxy as their domain, with every star, planet, and species existing solely for their exploitation. To them, the notion of any force capable of challenging their supremacy was laughable. They had faced every conceivable threat and emerged victorious, leaving nothing but ashes in their wake. It was this arrogance that led them to dismiss humanity as a negligible presence, a species long thought to be extinct or so weakened by past conflicts that they posed no real threat. The Dominion's records on humanity were scant, buried deep within their archives. Once, humans had been a rising power, but they had disappeared from the galactic stage centuries ago, leaving behind only whispers and myths. To the Dominion, humans were an afterthought, a relic of a forgotten era. Their technology, if it still existed, was presumed to be primitive by the Empire's standards. The idea that a single human ship could stand against the might of the Dominion was inconceivable, a notion too absurd to entertain. At the heart of the Dominion's military might was General Thalrex, a seasoned warrior who had commanded countless fleets in the name of the Empire. Thalrex had witnessed the fall of entire civilizations, orchestrating their destruction with cold precision. His name was synonymous with victory, his strategies studied and revered by those under his command. To Thalrex, leading a fleet of 10,000 ships was a routine operation, one that he approached with the confidence of a predator assured of its prey. His experience had taught him that there were no surprises left in the galaxy, only enemies waiting to be defeated. When reports of a lone human ship surfaced in a remote sector of space, Thalrex barely registered the information. It was a minor curiosity, not worth diverting the full attention of his fleet. The idea that a single ship, especially one from a species so thoroughly disregarded by the Dominion, could pose any real challenge was laughable. Thalrex ordered his fleet to investigate, and if necessary eliminate the vessel. He expected a quick resolution, a minor skirmish that would end with the human ship's destruction and another victory added to the Dominion's long list of conquests. But beneath his confidence, there was a sliver of curiosity. Thalrex, like many in the Dominion, had heard the old stories, whispers of human technology that defied explanation, of battles fought in the distant past where humanity had held its own against overwhelming odds. These were tales told to children, ghost stories meant to thrill and terrify in equal measure. Thalrex dismissed them as legends, relics of a time long gone. Yet, as his fleet closed in on the human ship, he couldn't help but wonder if there was a kernel of truth buried within the myths. The human ship, it was reported, was unlike any the Dominion had encountered. Its design was ancient, almost archaic, yet there was something unsettling about it. Energy readings from the vessel were off the charts, defying the Dominion's understanding of physics. Thalrex's interest was piqued, but not enough to concern him. He had faced anomalies before, and each time, his fleet had emerged victorious. This would be no different. The human ship, whatever secrets it held, would be just another target, another example of the Dominion's unstoppable power. As Thalrex prepared his fleet for the encounter, his mind remained focused on the objective, annihilation. There was no need for negotiation or mercy. The Dominion did not tolerate resistance, and any ship that dared to challenge their authority would be obliterated. Thalrex was confident that his fleet, with its vast array of weapons and superior numbers, would crush the human vessel in mere moments. The battle, if it could even be called that, would be over before it began. And yet, as the distance between the Dominion fleet and the human ship closed, a sense of unease began to creep into Thalrex's thoughts. The reports coming in from his scouts were inconsistent, fragmented. It was as if the human ship was more than just a relic, it was a ghost, a phantom from the past that had somehow returned to haunt the present. Thalrex brushed aside these thoughts, focusing on the task at hand. But deep down, a small part of him wondered if perhaps, just perhaps, the Dominion had underestimated humanity. The phantom dreadnought appeared on the Dominion's sensors as a faint blip, almost imperceptible against the backdrop of the vast, empty sector of space. It was a remote region, far from any known trade routes or strategic locations, an area that the Dominion rarely patrolled. But there it was, a solitary signal that defied explanation. At first, the blip was dismissed as an anomaly, a glitch in the sensor array or a harmless piece of space debris. Yet, as the Dominion fleet drew closer, the signal grew stronger, more defined, until it became clear that this was no mere anomaly. This was a ship. The initial reports were met with mild curiosity. A lone vessel, here in the middle of nowhere, was an oddity, but not one that merited significant concern. The Dominion had encountered stray ships before, relics of ancient battles, derelicts from forgotten wars, or remnants of long-dead civilizations. They were usually easy prey, picked apart for resources or simply destroyed as a show of power. But as the fleet closed in on the source of the signal, that curiosity began to turn into something else, an unspoken unease that rippled through the ranks. The ship that emerged from the darkness was unlike anything the Dominion had ever seen. It was massive, far larger than any standard warship, yet its design was archaic, almost alien in its geometry. The hull was a deep, matte black, absorbing the starlight around it, and giving the impression of a void in space itself. The lines of the ship were sharp and angular, with no visible markings or insignias, no lights or windows, just a monolithic structure that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. And then there were the energy readings, spiking to levels that should have been impossible for a vessel of its size. The ship exuded a power that was both ancient and terrifyingly advanced. The Dominion fleet's initial reaction was one of professional curiosity. They scanned the ship from every angle, probing its defenses and trying to decipher its origin. But the dreadnought's systems defied all attempts at analysis. It was as if the ship existed in a different reality, where the usual rules of physics didn't apply. The energy readings fluctuated wildly, giving off signals that the Dominion's instruments couldn't fully interpret. The hull, seemingly impenetrable, reflected back every scan, every attempt to breach its defenses met with failure. Yet, despite these anomalies, the fleet's commanders remained confident. After all, they had faced the unknown before and had always emerged victorious. But there was something unsettling about this ship. It wasn't just the odd readings or the sheer size of the vessel, it was the silence. The dreadnought made no attempt to communicate, no response to the Dominion's hails or threats. It floated in space, a silent sentinel, ignoring every effort to make contact. The lack of response was unnerving, even to the seasoned warriors of the Dominion. Ships, no matter how ancient or advanced, usually showed some sign of life, an acknowledgement of the presence of others. But this ship remained mute, its intentions a mystery. As the minutes ticked by, the unease among the Dominion's ranks grew. The alien general, watching the readings from his command ship, felt a creeping suspicion that this encounter was not as routine as he had initially thought. The Phantom Dreadnought, as it was quickly dubbed by his crew, was unlike any adversary they had faced before. Its silence was not the silence of fear or indecision, but something else, something far more calculated. The general, ever the pragmatist, ordered his fleet to maintain their distance for the moment, to observe the ship and gather more data before engaging. but the fleet's confidence remained unshaken. They were, after all, the Galactic Dominion's finest, equipped with the most powerful ships and weapons in the galaxy. The idea that a single ship, no matter how strange, could pose a real threat was absurd. The general's advisors recommended a full-scale attack, a show of force to either provoke a reaction or obliterate the vessel outright. The general considered this, his eyes never leaving the image of the dreadnought on his screen. It was a tempting option, one that would end this encounter quickly and decisively. Yet something held him back, a nagging doubt that whispered caution. The phantom dreadnought continued to drift, its dark hull absorbing all light, making it seem almost invisible against the backdrop of space. The Dominion fleet, now fully encircling the ship, prepared for action. Weapon systems were primed, targeting arrays locked onto the dreadnought's core. The fleet's officers exchanged confident glances, certain that the dreadnought's silence was a sign of weakness, of a ship that had strayed too far from its time. But as they prepared to fire, the unease returned, stronger now, as if the ship itself was radiating an aura of dread. Then, without warning, the dreadnought shifted. It was a subtle movement, almost imperceptible, but it sent a jolt of surprise through the Dominion fleet. The ship, which had been motionless until now, turned slightly, as if acknowledging the presence of the alien armada surrounding it. There was no change in its energy readings, no sign of weapons being charged, yet the very act of movement felt ominous. The Dominion's confidence wavered for the first time, replaced by a flicker of doubt. The general, sensing the shift in his crew's morale, barked orders to maintain formation. He refused to let fear take hold, not when they had the advantage of numbers and firepower. But even as he gave the command to prepare for engagement, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something crucial, that the Phantom Dreadnought was more than just a ship. It was a relic from a time long forgotten, a ghost from humanity's past that had returned for reasons he could not yet comprehend. The Dominion fleet moved into position with practiced precision, each ship following the orders of the alien general without hesitation. The fleet, a force of 10,000 strong, surrounded the Phantom Dreadnought in a perfect sphere, cutting off any possible escape routes. The general, seated at the helm of his command ship, observed the proceedings with a mixture of confidence and impatience. To him, this was a routine exercise, another small obstacle to be crushed beneath the overwhelming might of the Dominion. He gave the order to engage, expecting a swift and decisive victory. As the command was relayed, the Dominion ships unleashed their firepower in unison. Beams of energy, powerful enough to vaporize entire cities, lanced out from the surrounding vessels. Missiles streaked across the void, each one carrying warheads designed to breach the toughest of defenses. The barrage was relentless, a testament to the Dominion's belief in overwhelming force. The space around the Phantom Dreadnought lit up with the fury of the attack, a storm of destructive energy aimed at obliterating the human ship. Yet, as the energy blasts and missiles struck the Dreadnought, something unexpected happened, or rather, didn't happen. The Phantom Dreadnought remained completely unscathed. Its shields absorbed the energy with an almost casual ease, dispersing the attacks as though they were mere ripples against a stone. The missiles detonated harmlessly upon contact, their force dissipated as if they had struck an impenetrable wall. The ship didn't even shudder under the assault, it simply stood there, defying the onslaught as if mocking the Dominion's power. Confusion spread through the Dominion ranks. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. By all accounts, the human ship should have been reduced to debris by now, its remnants floating lifelessly in space. But the Phantom Dreadnought remained whole, its dark, ominous form untouched by the barrage. The Dominion fleet, so accustomed to swift victories, faltered. The general, seeing the confusion in his officers' eyes, barked orders to maintain the assault. He refused to believe that this ancient relic could withstand the full might of his fleet. It was impossible. And yet, the evidence was undeniable. As the Dominion ships continued their assault, the frustration of the general grew. The Dreadnought's defenses were unlike anything he had encountered before. No matter how much firepower was directed at it, the result was the same: no damage, no sign of weakness. The general's confidence began to waver, replaced by a gnawing doubt. He ordered a full-scale attack, commanding every ship in the fleet to focus their firepower on the human vessel. If the dreadnought had a breaking point, he was determined to find it. The fleet responded, redoubling their efforts. The space around the Phantom dreadnought became a cauldron of explosive energy as thousands of weapons systems fired in unison. The Dominion ships pushed their reactors to the limit, generating as much destructive force as possible. The general watched intently, his eyes fixed on the dreadnought, willing it to crumble under the pressure. But as the seconds turned to minutes, it became clear that no amount of firepower could penetrate the ship's defenses. The dreadnought's shields held firm, absorbing the onslaught without so much as a flicker. Panic began to set in among the Dominion fleet. The officers, once confident in their superiority, now exchanged anxious glances. The dreadnought's silence was deafening, its resilience terrifying. It had not fired a single shot in retaliation, yet it had already won the psychological battle. The general, his frustration boiling over, ordered his ships to close the distance. If they couldn't destroy the dreadnought from afar, they would do it up close, using every weapon at their disposal to tear the human ship apart. But as the Dominion ships moved in, something shifted. The Phantom dreadnought, which had been motionless until now, began to emit a low hum. The sound reverberated through the hulls of the Dominion vessels, a deep, resonant frequency that seemed to shake them to their cores. The general, sensing a change, ordered his fleet to halt, but it was too late. The dreadnought's shields flared with a sudden burst of energy, sending shockwaves rippling through space. The nearest Dominion ships were thrown off course, their systems overloaded by the surge. Before the general could react, the Phantom dreadnought unleashed its own attack. It was swift and devastating. The ship's weaponry, unlike anything the Dominion had ever seen, cut through the surrounding vessels with ease. Beams of energy, impossibly precise, sliced through hulls, disabling ships in an instant. The once organized formation of the Dominion fleet disintegrated as ships were torn apart, their debris scattered across the battlefield. The dreadnought moved with terrifying efficiency, its every action calculated and unstoppable. The general watched in horror as his fleet was decimated. The realization hit him like a physical blow: they were outmatched. This was no ordinary ship, it was a force of nature, a weapon from humanity's past that had returned with a vengeance. The battle, which had begun with such confidence, was now a desperate struggle for survival. The general, his pride shattered, ordered a retreat. But the Phantom dreadnought wasn't finished. It pursued the fleeing ships, dismantling them one by one with cold precision. The moment finally arrived when the Phantom dreadnought decided to reveal its true power. For too long, it had remained silent, absorbing the relentless assault from the Dominion fleet without so much as a scratch. Now, as the Dominion ships attempted to close in for the kill, the dreadnought's systems began to hum with an eerie, otherworldly energy. The ship, once a motionless monolith, became a living entity, awakening to fulfill the purpose for which it had been created. Inside the ship, long-dormant technologies, far beyond the comprehension of even the most advanced civilizations, sprang to life. The dreadnought's exterior shimmered as its shields intensified, warping the space around it. The first sign of its true capabilities came as the ship's gravity warping technology activated. The space around the Phantom dreadnought began to distort, bending light and matter in ways that defied the laws of physics. Dominion ships closest to the dreadnought suddenly found themselves pulled off course, dragged by invisible forces that twisted their hulls and crushed their structures. The gravitic fields, controlled with pinpoint precision, tore through the ranks of the Dominion fleet, leaving a trail of wreckage in their wake. Simultaneously, the dreadnought's energy cannons came online, emitting beams of concentrated power that cut through the darkness like scythes. These beams were not merely destructive, they were annihilative, reducing anything in their path to atoms. Dominion ships, designed to withstand the most powerful weapons in the galaxy, disintegrated in an instant, their shields and armor offering no protection against the dreadnought's assault. The beams sliced through the fleet with surgical precision, each shot calculated to inflict maximum damage with minimal effort. One by one, the ships fell, their crews barely having time to react before being obliterated. As the destruction spread, panic rippled through the Dominion forces. The confidence that had once fueled their advance vanished, replaced by a growing sense of dread. The sheer power of the Phantom Dreadnought was beyond anything they had ever encountered. It was as if the ship itself was a force of nature, a weapon of unimaginable potency unleashed upon them. The Dominion's strategies, their superior numbers, their technological advantages, none of it mattered in the face of this overwhelming power. The fleet, which had entered the battle expecting an easy victory, was now in disarray, its ships desperately trying to escape the Dreadnought's reach. But there was no escape. The Phantom Dreadnought was relentless, its advanced missiles locking onto targets with unerring accuracy. These missiles, equipped with experimental warheads, tore through the remaining Dominion ships, bypassing their defenses as if they were non-existent. Explosions rocked the battlefield as ship after ship was torn apart, their debris scattered across the void. The missiles didn't just destroy, they erased, leaving behind nothing but fragments of what once had been the Dominion's pride and joy. On the bridge of his command ship, the alien general watched in horror as his fleet was systematically dismantled. The Dreadnought's power was unlike anything he had ever witnessed, its weapons far beyond the capabilities of the Dominion's finest ships. The general, who had once been so confident in his ability to crush any opposition, now felt an icy fear creeping into his soul. This was not a battle, it was a massacre, and he was powerless to stop it. The realization that he had underestimated the human ship, that he had led his fleet into a slaughter, was almost too much to bear. The general's commands became frantic, his once calm and composed demeanor shattered by the scale of the destruction unfolding before him. He ordered his remaining ships to fall back, to regroup and find a way to counter the Dreadnought's onslaught. But it was too late. The Phantom Dreadnought moved through the Dominion fleet with a cold, calculated efficiency, picking off ships one by one. Every attempt to retaliate, every desperate maneuver to escape, was met with the same devastating response. The fleet was being torn apart, its strength reduced to nothing more than a collection of burning wrecks. As the last of the Dominion ships fell, the general could only watch, helpless and horrified, as his once mighty armada was reduced to ruins. The Dreadnought, having completed its work, returned to its silent, ominous state, hovering among the debris of the destroyed fleet. The general's mind raced, trying to comprehend what had just happened, but there were no answers, only the chilling reality of his defeat. The human ship, a relic from a forgotten time, had single-handedly destroyed 10,000 of the Dominion's best ships, and there was nothing he could do to change that. The general's terror grew as he realized the implications of what he had witnessed. If this was the power of a single human ship, what else might be hidden in the depths of space, waiting to challenge the Dominion's rule? The Dreadnought had shattered the illusion of the Dominion's invincibility, revealing a vulnerability that the general had never believed existed. The fear that now gripped him was not just for his own life, but for the future of the entire Dominion. This encounter had shown that humanity, long thought to be a defeated and forgotten species, still possessed the power to shake the galaxy to its core. The battle was over, but the echoes of its devastation lingered in the vast expanse of space. The once mighty Dominion fleet, an armada of 10,000 ships that had symbolized the Galactic Dominion's unchallenged power, was now nothing more than a graveyard of twisted metal and shattered hulls. The debris field stretched for miles, a silent testament to the carnage that had unfolded. Among the wreckage, the Phantom Dreadnought drifted, untouched and unmoved, its dark form a stark contrast to the chaos surrounding it. It had emerged from the battle completely unscathed, its mission fulfilled, leaving behind only destruction and despair. The alien general, now the sole survivor aboard his crippled command ship, stared out at the wreckage with a numbness that had settled into his very bones. The magnitude of the defeat was beyond comprehension. He had entered this battle with absolute certainty in his fleet's dominance, yet here he was, witnessing the total annihilation of everything he had commanded. The general's thoughts swirled with disbelief and horror, but as the reality of the situation sank in, a deep and overwhelming fear began to take root. He had underestimated the human ship, and in doing so, he had brought ruin upon his fleet and possibly his entire empire. The general replayed the battle in his mind, searching for any clue, any sign he might have missed that could explain the sheer power of the Phantom Dreadnought. But there was no rational explanation that could account for what he had witnessed. This ship, this relic of a forgotten time, had destroyed 10,000 of the Dominion's best vessels with a power that defied all known technology. It was a weapon of unimaginable strength, one that the Dominion had never anticipated and was wholly unprepared to counter. The general's confidence, once unshakable, had been shattered. He now understood that the Dominion, for all its arrogance and might, was not as invincible as it had believed. As the general's fear deepened, so too did his understanding of the broader implications for the Galactic Dominion. This was more than just a lost battle, it was a seismic shift in the balance of power. The destruction of 10,000 ships was a crippling blow to the Dominion's military, one that would take decades to recover from, if at all. But the damage went beyond mere numbers. The knowledge of the Phantom Dreadnought's existence, and its unparalleled power, would spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Rumors would turn to fear, and fear would turn to rebellion. The Dominion's grip on its territories, once so firm and unyielding, would begin to slip as more and more species questioned the Empire's strength. The general could already see the fractures forming. The Dominion's allies, drawn to its power and protection, would begin to reconsider their loyalties. Its enemies, long subdued by the threat of overwhelming force, would seize this opportunity to rise up, emboldened by the knowledge that the Dominion was not invincible. The galaxy, once under the Dominion's iron control, would descend into chaos and uncertainty. The general knew that this single battle could very well mark the beginning of the end for the empire he had served his entire life. But as terrifying as the loss of power and control was, it was the uncertainty surrounding the Phantom Dreadnought that haunted the general the most. This ship, this weapon, had appeared without warning, and just as quickly, it could disappear back into the depths of space. The general had no way of knowing where it had come from or who controlled it. The dreadnought had fought with a precision and purpose that suggested a larger strategy, a hidden hand guiding its actions. Was it a lone relic, or were there more like it, waiting to be unleashed upon the galaxy? These questions gnawed at the general, each one more unsettling than the last. The Phantom Dreadnought began to move, its dark silhouette gliding through the debris field with an eerie grace. The general watched in silence, his thoughts consumed by the implications of its departure. The ship, having fulfilled its purpose, was leaving the battlefield as silently as it had arrived. But the general knew that this was not the last the galaxy would see of it. The dreadnought had sent a clear message, one that would reverberate throughout the stars. Humanity, long thought defeated and forgotten, still possessed the power to challenge the mightiest empires. And now, the Dominion had been put on notice. As the Phantom Dreadnought vanished into the void, the general was left alone with his thoughts. The wreckage of his fleet surrounded him, a grim reminder of his failure. The dreadnought's disappearance marked the end of the battle, but it also marked the beginning of a new era, one in which the Galactic Dominion was no longer the unchallenged power it once was. The general knew that the fear of the dreadnought would spread, and with it, the seeds of doubt and rebellion. The Dominion's rule, once absolute, would be tested in ways it had never been before.